The pain made the numbers blur. Mara Linwood squinted at her cracked phone screen, breath coming in thin, shallow pulls that made her side scream. The apartment smelled like spilled beer and cheap cologne. The door was locked from the outside. It always locked from the outside when Damon was teaching her a lesson. Tonight, the lesson had been his elbow driving into her ribs. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. She scrolled to Sarah's name by muscle memory. Her vision tunneled, dark spots pulsing at the edges, but her thumb still found the green call button. It rang once. Twice. A click. A man answered. Deep, steady, ancient. Where are you? That wasn't Sarah. Mara froze, back pressed to the cold wall, heartbeat pounding in her ears. I called the wrong. I'm sorry. What did he do? The stranger asked, voice low and controlled in a way that made the air feel heavier. You said he broke something. My rib, she whispered, tears burning again. He locked me in. I can't get out. I thought I was calling my friend. Silence hummed down the line. Not empty, listening. Tell me, he said softly, exactly where you are. I shouldn't. Mara, he said, like he already knew her name, like a king giving an order and an alpha warning all at once. Tell me where you are so I can end this. Before fear could talk her out of it, she whispered her address, the building, the floor, the peeling green door with the broken peephole. Halfway through, her voice cracked. He didn't ask questions. Didn't tell her to calm down. Didn't ask if maybe she'd provoke Damon. He just repeated her address back to her, perfectly, like he'd carved it into stone. Stay away from the door, he said. Sit on the floor, back against the far wall. Don't move until I tell you. I'm coming. The call ended. Mara stared at the dead screen, dazed. She'd called a stranger. Not Sarah. Not anyone she knew. Some man with a voice like storm clouds and old cathedrals. She should redial. She should call 911. She should do anything except believe him. Instead, she slid slowly down the wall, one hand braced to protect her rib, the other still clutching the phone. Her brain tried to spiral. Damon's temper, the way he'd sneered. You'll learn, Omega. Like she was something beneath him, the way he told her no one else would ever want her. The clock on the microwave read 1:07 a.m. Somewhere between her fear and the ticking seconds, the thought surfaced. If you're hearing this as a story, pause for a second. Subscribe for more stories like these and comment where you're watching from so I know I'm not alone out here. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Not Damon's dragon stomp. These were slow. Precise. Ownership in every step, the way a king walks into a throne room he already controls. The lock clicked. The door swung inward. A man filled the doorway, tall, all in black, a dark coat falling over broad shoulders. The dim hallway light caught the sharp edges of his face, the stillness of his body. His eyes found her instantly. They weren't quite human. You're hurt, he said calmly. Mara's breath itched. You're the wrong number. His mouth curved, just barely. I'm Kaelan Varis. And tonight, Mara, you called the alpha vampire king of this city. He crossed the room in 3 strides, movements smooth in a way that made her skin prickle. Not rushed, but inevitable, like gravity. May I? He asked, one hand hovering near her shoulder, careful not to touch until she nodded. She nodded. The moment his arms slid behind her back, she felt how badly she was shaking. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, as if broken ribs and bruises were made of air. No grunt. No hitch of effort. Just strength that didn't make sense. Up close, his eyes were impossible to read. Dark, but with a faint ring of silver, like moonlight caught in a storm. Who did this? Kaelan asked. My fiancé, Mara said, tasting the word like poison. Damon. His jaw ticked, only once. Is he here? No. He left an hour ago. Said I could think about what I did wrong. Good, Kaelan murmured, and the words sounded anything but merciful. Then we have time. He carried her out of the apartment, down the dim concrete stairwell that smelled like mildew and old cigarette smoke. No neighbors peeked out. No one came to see why a stranger was carrying a woman who couldn't breathe properly. Outside, the night air hit her face like a blessing. A sleek black car idled at the curb, windows tinted almost black. A man in a dark suit stood by the rear door, posture respectful. "Open," Kaelan said. The door swung wide. He set Mara gently on the leather seat, then crouched so his eyes were level with hers. "What's your full name?" he asked. "Mara Linwood." "Mara." He said it like he was trying it on his tongue, memorizing it. "You're safe now." She swallowed. "Why, you don't even know me." His gaze softened by a fraction. "I know enough. I heard you call for help. I heard the way you said he'd broke my rib like you expected no one to care." His voice went quieter. "I care." Streetlights slid across his face, painting him in bands of gold and shadow. For a second, she almost forgot to be afraid. "My friend," she started. "Sarah. I meant to call her." You called me," Kaelan said simply. "That's all that matters." He shut the door with a soft click and moved around the car. Mara twisted enough to see him speak to the driver through the open window. She couldn't quite hear the words, but she saw the way the other man straightened like a soldier receiving orders. As the car pulled away from the curb, her phone buzzed weakly in her hand. 17 missed calls. Damon. Her stomach clenched. Kaelan glanced back at her. "Block his number." "I can't," she whispered. He knows where I work, my building, my friends. He calls himself an alpha, like the world belongs to him." Her voice shook. "He'll come for me." Kaelan's expression didn't change, but the air in the car felt colder. Older. "I'm the only alpha he needs to worry about now," Kaelan said. "And I'm not in the habit of losing what I've chosen to protect." The city blurred past in a wash of neon and shadow. Mara hugged her arms to her stomach, every bump in the road sending a flare of pain through her side. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere he can't reach you tonight," Kaelan said. "My house." House was the wrong word. Iron gates loomed out of the darkness, high and intricate, threaded with climbing roses that glowed faintly silver under the moon. Stone pillars stood like sentries on either side. The driver tapped a code into a panel. The gates swung open without a sound. They drove up a long, tree-lined drive, branches arching overhead like the ribs of some sleeping beast. At the end of the drive, a mansion rose, old stone, tall windows, balconies wrapped in wrought iron. Warm light glowed behind some curtains, making the place feel strangely alive. It didn't scream ostentatious wealth. It whispered power. The car stopped beneath a covered arch. Kaelan stepped out first, then opened her door himself, offering his hand. Mara hesitated only a heartbeat before taking it. Inside, the entry hall was high and airy, lit by soft, golden sconces. Art lined the walls, landscapes, portraits, old maps. It smelled like polished wood and something faintly metallic she couldn't place. A woman waited near the stairs, dark hair braided down her back, wearing all black but with kind eyes. "This is Tamsin," Kaelan said. "She runs the house." "Tamsin, this is Mara." Tamsin's gaze swept over Mara, taking in the way she held her side. "You poor thing," she said gently. "We've prepared a room. And Dr. Everin is already on his way to check your ribs, my king." "My king." The words slipped out so casually, but they landed in Mara's chest like a dropped stone. "King." Kaelan didn't correct her. He guided Mara up the wide staircase, steps silent despite his solid frame. Each footfall was measured, as if he'd walked these halls for centuries. "Who are you?" she breathed. His mouth curved, not quite a smile. "We'll talk when you've seen the doctor. You're an Omega right now, wounded, cornered. The only thing that matters is getting you stabilized." "I'm not an Omega," she muttered automatically, stung by the word. "I'm just me." He glanced over his shoulder, eyes gleaming faintly. You're more than you think, Mara Linwood. The guest room he led her into was bigger than her entire apartment. Soft gray walls, heavy curtains, a bed that looked like it could swallow her whole. For the first time in hours, the constant buzz of fear in her veins eased. Kaelan lingered by the doorway. Rest, he said quietly. Dr. Everin will be here in minutes. I'll be downstairs. Will you? She hated the way her voice sounded, small and breakable. Will you really stop him? Damon? Kaelan's eyes darkened. He hurt what's mine to protect. He locked what he thought was a defenseless Omega in a cage and broke her ribs for daring to breathe wrong. His voice went soft and lethal. Yes, Mara. I'll stop him. Dr. Everin smelled like antiseptic and peppermint tea. He was older, hair mostly silver, with kind brown eyes and hands that moved with careful precision. Tamsin stayed just inside the doorway while he examined Mara, her presence a quiet reassurance. Breathe in, Dr. Everin said. Mara tried. Pain shot through her side like white fire. She hissed. Bruise, he murmured. Badly. Possibly a hairline fracture, but I don't feel instability. We'll wrap your torso, keep you still, and get proper scans tomorrow. For tonight, no sudden movements, no deep breaths if you can help it, ice on and off. He straightened, giving her a grim but gentle smile. You'll hurt, but you're not punctured. You're safe here. Safe. The word felt unfamiliar on her skin. Is Kaelan? She hesitated. What is he to you? Dr. Everin's gaze flicked briefly to Tamsin, then back to Mara. He's my king, he said simply. And he has kept this city from tearing itself apart longer than you've been alive. He's not human, is he? Mara whispered. Tamsin's mouth quirked. You noticed. Everin packed his bag. Rest. He'll answer your questions when he thinks you're ready for the answers. When they left, the room went quiet. Mara lay there, staring at the ornate ceiling. The events of the night churned in her skull. The wrong number, the voice on the phone, the way he'd appeared at her door like a shadow made solid. A king. An alpha. Something more. She must have drifted, because the next thing she heard was a soft knock. Come in, she called softly. The door opened. Kaelan stepped inside, now without the coat, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He looked exactly the same as before, no tired lines, no signs of a long night. He closed the door behind him with a quiet click. How do you feel? Like I lost a fight with a truck, she muttered. But Dr. Everin says I'll live. Good. He moved to the chair by the bed but didn't sit, hands loosely clasped in front of him. Mara, I need to tell you something before you hear it from anyone else. Her throat tightened. You're not going to tell me I imagine everything and send me back, are you? His gaze sharpened, a flash of anger there, not at her, but at the thought. No. You're not going back to someone who treats you like prey. He hesitated, then said, But you were right. I'm not human. Her heart thudded once, hard. I guessed. I rule the hidden side of this city, Kaelan said slowly. The clans in the dark, the hunters on the edges, the packs that run under the full moon. They call me king because for centuries I've kept the balance. Vampire. Alpha. The one who answers when no one else does. He watched her carefully, as if bracing for the flinch. Mara just stared at him. That's a lot, she admitted. But right now, all I can think is that you answered the phone when my own friends ignored the signs. You came when I said I couldn't breathe. You carried me out of there. Her voice went quiet. That's what matters. Something softened in his face, a crack in centuries of stone. You're not afraid? He asked. Terrified, she said honestly. But not of you. Downstairs, Kaelan's world glowed on screens. Mara wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and followed him into a room that looked like a cross between a study and a war room. Monitors lined one wall, showing different angles of the grounds, the street outside, and her breath hitched. Her apartment building. You have cameras on my place? She asked. I do now, Kaelan answered. I had my people move fast once I knew where you were. He tapped a keyboard. One of the feeds zoomed in on a familiar battered sedan idling a block away from her building. Damon. He sat in the driver's seat, staring at her building, jaw working. He came back, Mara whispered. As predicted. Kaelan's voice went cold. Abusers like Damon don't see people. They see property. He thinks he's lost control of his Omega, and he's trying to figure out who took his toy. I'm not his Omega, Mara said, heat flare in her voice. Kaelan glanced at her, something like satisfaction flickering in his eyes. No, he agreed. You're not. You're your own. That's what scares him. Another feed showed a different angle. A second car sat at the edge of the block, lights off. 2 men inside. One lifted binoculars. Who are they? Mara asked. Contractors, Kaelan said. Private investigators or hired muscle. Damon's trying to track you. He's already panicking. The realization made her sway. So I just moved from one cage to another? I can't go anywhere without him sending people? No, Kaelan said. You moved from a cage into a fortress. He turned to face her fully, the weight of his attention settling on her. I can erase you if you want. New name, new identity, new city. I've done it before for humans who wanted to vanish. She thought of bus stations and cold motel rooms, of living out of a backpack, always looking over her shoulder. Of Damon's voice in her head, telling her she'd never make it on her own. Then she thought of the way Kaelan had said, I care, like it was a promise. Of the way Tamsin had called him king without fear. I'm tired of running, Mara said quietly. I'm tired of being the one who disappears. This time, he should be the one to vanish. Kaelan's eyes brightened, something like pride there. Then we make a stand, he said. You and me. Alpha and whatever you decide you are. For a heartbeat, she let herself imagine that. Standing beside someone who didn't want to own her, just guard her. A king who treated her like an equal soul instead of a subject. Okay, she whispered. We do this together. His mouth curved, the barest hint of a real smile. Agreed. Days in Kaelan's house had their own strange rhythm. She woke to sunlight spilling across pale curtains, to the smell of coffee drifting up from the kitchen. Her ribs ached less each morning. Tamsin made sure she ate, sat with her at the long wooden table, filling the silence with stories about the city, some mundane, some edged with supernatural shadows. Kaelan was always awake when she came downstairs, no matter how early. He moved like a shadow around the house. On the phone in a language she didn't recognize, reading in an armchair older than her grandparents', watching the monitors with a stillness that never broke. He never ate. He drank coffee sometimes, dark and black, but never touched the food Tamsin set out. At first, Mara thought it was stress. Then she started to notice other things. He never blinked unless he meant to. He never seemed to breathe. He never turned on overhead lights. He moved through the dim like it was perfectly bright. On the third morning, she came into the study to find him staring at a paused feed. Damon again, pacing outside a shabby office building. Still looking, Kaelan said without turning. He's been asking questions. Telling people his Omega ran into trouble, that some monster stole his fiancé. He called you a monster? She asked. Kaelan's lips twitched. He doesn't know what kind yet. Mara stepped closer, hugging the blanket tighter around herself. Why do you care? She asked finally. About me? You're a vampire king or whatever. I'm just some girl who dialed the wrong number. His gaze slid to her, holding hers. You didn't dial the wrong number, he said. You dialed the one person in this city who takes he broke my rib as a declaration of war. She swallowed. But why you? Why not the police? Because the police have rules. His voice went soft. They have red tape and paperwork and sometimes the same biases that let men like Damon walk free. I don't. He looked back at the screen, expression carved from stone. And because a very long time ago, I was the one who called for help and no one came. I won't be that silence for anyone else. The honesty of it stole her breath. You were hurt? She asked. Once. His jaw tightened. Another lifetime. I learned. I became the thing that knocks back when monsters knock first. He turned from the screens fully now, stepping closer until she could see the faint silver ring in his irises, like a crown around darkness. You asked what I am? He said. I am king to the things that live in the dark. I am alpha to those who would follow. And from the moment you said he broke my rib into my ear, Mara Linwood, you became under my protection. Her heart hammered, but it wasn't fear. Then I guess, she said softly, this is the first time being anyone's Omega has sounded like a good thing. Night dropped over the city like a curtain. Mara stood by the tall window in her room, watching the street beyond the gates. Her phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark. She changed her number that afternoon, a burner Kaelan's people had set up. Only 3 contacts, Sarah, Tamsin, Kaelan. Sarah had called, voice shaking with apologies when Mara finally told her what had been happening. I didn't know, Sarah had whispered. I thought he was just intense. Mara understood. Damon was charming with everyone else. The monster only came out in private. Now, as the clock read 10:14 p.m., her new phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her stomach clenched. She declined the call. A text arrived immediately after. Come home, Mara. We can talk like adults. You owe me that much. Her fingers trembled over the screen. Another text came. You don't want me to get angry again. Answer the phone. A third. If you're hearing this somewhere on your little story channels, Mara, remember, comments and likes won't save you. I will always find you. Her blood ran cold. She forwarded the messages to Kaelan without adding anything. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Stay in your room. Lock the door. I'm handling it. She locked the door. It didn't make her feel safer. Not until she heard footsteps in the hall, Kaelan's calm, measured stride stopping outside her room. I know it's locked, he said quietly through the wood. But may I still come in? She opened it. I told you to stay in your room, he said, but there was no reprimand in his voice. Only concern. I did, she murmured. You knocked. One corner of his mouth tipped up. It faded quickly. He texted you. Yes. He's getting desperate. Kaelan's eyes darkened. Desperate men make mistakes. What are you going to do? End it, he said simply. He's already crossed the line. He's hired people. He's stalking your old place. He's trying to get a reaction. His voice dropped. Tonight he'll get one. Kaelan's war began quietly. He descended to the study with a predator's grace, Mara trailing just behind him despite his warning. Tamsin and 2 other figures were already there. A tall woman with short cropped hair and a scar across her lip, and a man whose eyes glowed faintly golden in the low light. Rhea. Jace, Kaelan said. Report. We've got eyes on Damon, Rhea said, tapping one of the monitors. The feed shifted to show Damon outside a bar, gesturing wildly at 2 men in biker jackets. He's drunk, but not sloppy yet. Running his mouth. Calling you a leech king. Saying he's going to drag his Omega back by her hair. Mara's skin crawled. And the house? Kaelan asked. Perimeter secured, Jace said. His voice held a faint rumble, wolf under the words. Iron lines drawn, wards humming. Anyone tries to breach without our mark, we know. Kaelan nodded once. Good. Rhea, you and Jace stay on external. Nobody gets through the gates unless I say so. Tamsin, keep the staff inside and away from windows. And you? Tamsin asked. I'm going to have a conversation with Damon Linwood, Kaelan said. King 2, trash. Mara stepped forward before she could stop herself. I'm coming, she said. No. The word cracked through the room, sharp and absolute. Kaelan turned, dark eyes locking on hers. You're not bait. You're not a shield. You're the one who's been hurt enough. I'm not hiding while you fight for me, she said, heat rising in her chest. I've been hiding for months. Years. You're not hiding. His voice softened. You're surviving. That's different. I'm still coming, she insisted, surprising herself with the iron in her spine. He stared at her for a long beat, something ancient weighing the risk. Finally, he said, You'll stay behind the window in the upstairs hall. Curtains barely open. If I say run, you run. If I say duck, you duck. Your only job is to stay alive. Do you understand? Yes. Say it. My job is staying alive, she repeated. And if something happens to you, Nothing is going to happen to me, Kaelan said, and he smiled then, slow and dangerous. I am the oldest nightmare in this city, Mara. He has no idea what door he kicked. 15 minutes later, Damon arrived. Mara watched from the narrow gap in the curtains, heart thundering against her bruised ribcage. The street beyond the gates was quiet. Streetlights cast pools of yellow on the pavement. Damon's sedan pulled up too fast, tires squealing slightly. He got out, slammed the door, and stalked toward the gate. His hair was mussed, eyes wild. He wore the same leather jacket he'd thrown over the back of their couch the night he'd first shoved her into the wall. Seeing him here, outside Kaelan's world, felt surreal. Like two realities colliding. Come out, you blood-sucking freak! Damon bellowed, gripping the bars. I know what you are! I know what this place is! Kaelan stepped out of the shadows just beyond the gate. He didn't hurry. He didn't posture. He simply appeared, hands loose at his sides, coat brushing his boots. The air around him seemed to darken, like the night itself leaned closer to listen. You're on my property, Kaelan said calmly. That was your first mistake. Damon laughed, high and sharp. Oh, I did my research, Your Majesty, he sneered. Kaelan Varis. Vampire King. Alpha to the leeches. All those little treaties with the Human Council, all those rules about staying out of domestic affairs. He pulled something from his pocket, a small vial of liquid that shone oddly under the streetlight. You touch me, and this goes straight into the ground, into your precious soil. Maybe it reaches your wards. Maybe it doesn't. Want to find out? What is it? Kaelan asked, voice still mild. Silver, Damon said. Powdered. Concentrated. Enough to make any bloodsucker in 100 yards feel like their veins are on fire. You let Mara walk out with me right now, and nobody gets hurt. From her vantage point, Mara saw the slight tightening around Kaelan's eyes. Silver mattered then. Or, Damon continued, you keep her, and I make sure every hunter, every council, every alpha in this city knows you've been breaking your own laws. You'll lose your little throne so fast your head'll spin. Mara's nails bit into her palms. Damon always did this, twisted facts, made everything her fault, then threatened to destroy her life if she didn't obey. I'm not your property, she whispered, more to herself than anyone. As if he'd heard, Kaelan's voice changed. It dropped into something older, the chill of grave dirt and cathedral bells. You're going to leave this city tonight, he said. You're going to turn yourself in for what you did, assault, unlawful imprisonment. You're going to plead guilty. And then you're never going to speak Mara's name again. Damon scoffed. Or what? You'll drink me? Kaelan took one step forward. The temperature seemed to drop. Or I will make sure every creature in the shadows of this world knows you as prey, he said. You think you understand alphas and kings? You have no idea what it means when I mark your soul as condemned. For the first time, Damon faltered. Mara couldn't watch any more from behind glass. She pushed away from the window, clutching the banister as she half ran down the hallway. Her ribs protested, but adrenaline dulled the worst of it. Tamsin called her name softly, but didn't try to stop her. By the time Mara reached the front door, Kaelan and Damon were squared off 10 feet apart, separated by the iron gate. Damon's voice cut through the night. You think she wants to stay with a corpse? You think your little Omega wants a king who can't stand the sun? She's not your Omega, Kaelan said. She's mine, Damon snarled. I made her. I paid her bills, You broke her, Mara said, and her own voice startled her. Both men turned. The night felt very, very still. Mara stepped past the threshold, out into the cool air. The front walk stones were cold beneath her bare feet. Her heart threatened to punch through her ribcage, but she walked anyway, stopping just behind Kaelan's shoulder. Mara, Kaelan said quietly, not taking his eyes off Damon. You shouldn't be out here. I'm done hiding, she answered. You said we'd do this together. Damon's gaze raked over her, taking in the bruises around her rib, the blanket wrapped like a makeshift cloak. Look at you, he said, voice dripping contempt. Running to the first monster who whispers pretty words. You really are weak. I'm standing in front of you, she said. That's not weak. Get over here, he snapped, like she was a disobedient dog. You have no idea who you're messing with. You think this leech is going to protect you when the council comes? When the hunters start asking questions? Come home, Mara. Be smart for once. She remembered every moment she'd swallowed her fear. Every time she'd believed him when he said no one else would love her. Every apology she'd spoken for things that weren't her fault. Something inside her clicked. I am home, she said. And I'd rather stand beside a vampire king who listened when I whispered he broke my rib than crawl back to an alpha coward who did it. Damon's face twisted. The vial dropped. Kaelan moved like a shadow cut free from its host. 1 second Damon was lunging toward the gate, a syringe glinting in his other hand. The next Kaelan was through the bars, one hand around Damon's wrist, the other closing over his throat. The vial shattered on the pavement, silver liquid hissing where it hit the ward lines. The air crackled, but the wards held. Damon choked, feet scrabbling. The syringe clattered away. Listen carefully, Kaelan said, voice low and terrible. This is the part where the king gives you mercy you don't deserve. Mara watched, every muscle taut, as Kaelan bent Damon slowly to his knees. He didn't squeeze hard enough to crush. Just enough to remind Damon who held his life in his hand. You're going to walk into the nearest police station, Kaelan said. You're going to confess to everything. The bruises, the broken ribs, the locked doors. The threats, the stalking, the men you hired. Damon gagged. Why you can't? Kaelan's fingers flexed, cutting off the protest. You're going to sign whatever they put in front of you. You're going to accept whatever sentence the law gives. And if you try to run, his eyes gleamed silver, I will find you. There is nowhere on this earth or under it where my kind cannot reach. He let go. Damon slumped, coughing, hands flying to his throat. Why would I do that? Damon rasped. Why would I hand them the rope? Because you're going to feel me watching you for the rest of your life, Kaelan said. Every shadow, every dark doorway. You'll never know if I'm there or not. And if you ever lift a hand to another Omega, if you ever lock another human in a room and call it love, I will be. Damon scrambled to his feet, eyes flicking between Kaelan and Mara. This isn't over, he spat, but there was no weight behind it. Yes, Mara said, stepping forward until her voice carried cleanly through the night. It is. I called the wrong number, Damon. Best mistake I ever made. He flinched like she'd hit him. Sirens wailed in the distance. Damon's eyes widened. You. I called before you got here, Kaelan said. They're 3 blocks away. You can run, or you can walk in and pretend you chose this. Either way, your story ends differently than you thought. For one heartbeat, Mara saw the calculation on Damon's face, the way he weighed his chances, measured the distance to his car. Then, for the first time since she'd known him, she watched fear win. He ran. But not away. Toward the sound of the sirens. Kaelan let him go. The police lights painted everything red and blue. Mara sat on the front steps of Kaelan's house, wrapped in a blanket, a mug of tea cooling between her hands. Tamsin stayed beside her like a second shadow, a silent wall between Mara and the uniformed officers moving in and out of the gate. Kaelan had vanished into the dark edges of the scene, speaking with a detective away from prying ears. Sometimes they glanced her way. Sometimes the detective's expression shifted, surprise, then something like grim respect. "How are you holding up?" Tamsin asked quietly. "I don't know," Mara admitted. "I feel like if I stop talking, I'll either scream or sleep for a week." "Both are valid," Tamsin said. "You did well. You stood your ground." "I've never done that with him before," Mara said. "I always thought, if I just didn't make him mad, if I just tried harder." "That's how men like Damon survive," Tamsin said gently. "They convince queens they're pawns. They convince omegas they're lucky to be hurt by someone important." Mara swallowed. "I'm so tired of being afraid." "Then be tired," Tamsin said. "You're allowed to be. The king will hold the line tonight." As if summoned, Kaelan appeared at the bottom of the steps. "The detective has everything he needs," he said, eyes flicking over Mara's face like he was checking for cracks. "Footage from your building, statements from neighbors and co-workers. They suspected something, but never had proof." His voice darkened. "They do now." "And Damon?" Mara asked. "In custody," Kaelan said. "No bail recommended. Repeat patterns. Multiple witnesses. Even in the human system, the king's word carries weight when presented the right way." She exhaled slowly, the knot in her chest loosening inch by inch. "So it's really over?" "It's the beginning of the end," Kaelan said. "The human courts will do what they do. My world will be watching." He moved up one step, bringing himself closer to her eye level. "You were brave," he said quietly. "Braver than you realize." "I wasn't alone," she said. "That's new." His eyes softened. "Get used to it." For a second, the night felt small, just the space between them. The sirens, the officers, the murmured conversations, all faded. "Kaelan," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for answering." "Thank you for calling," he replied. The next morning, the house felt different. Lighter. Mara woke to a shaft of sunlight across her pillow and a weight lifted she hadn't even known how to name. The ache in her chest was still there, but it was healing pain now, not panic. She found Kaelan in the kitchen, of all places, standing by the counter with 2 mugs. "You drink coffee?" she asked, surprised. "I make coffee," he corrected. "Centuries perfecting the craft." He slid a mug toward her. "Cream, 2 sugars," he added. She blinked. "How did you?" "You grimaced every time Tamsin gave it to you black," he said, mouth quirking. "A king who doesn't observe doesn't stay king long." She took a sip. "It was perfect." "The police called," Kaelan said. "Damon's being held without bail. More people came forward overnight, neighbors, a co-worker. People who heard yelling, saw bruises, but didn't know what to do. Or didn't want to get involved," Mara said, bitterness flickering. "Maybe," Kaelan allowed. "Fear keeps a lot of mouths closed. But they're open now. That matters." She set the mug down, fingers tracing the rim. "So, no one's coming through the gates tonight. No one's parked on the corner watching?" "No one but mine," he said. "And they're watching over, not watching for." Silence stretched between them, comfortable this time. "What happens now?" she asked. "No," Kaelan said slowly. "You decide what you want. You can stay here as long as you like. I can help you find your own place. A different job. A fresh start. You owe me nothing." Her chest squeezed. "Don't do that," she said. Do what? He asked. Act like you pulled a stranger out of hell, risked your treaties and your throne, and it was just paperwork, she said. You're not some bored king signing a decree. You were the only one who came when I called. His gaze dropped for a second, as if the words were heavy. Mara, he said quietly, I don't want you to feel trapped here. Not by gratitude. Not by fear. I built this house as a refuge, not a gilded cage. She crossed the space between them, stopping close enough to feel the faint coolness radiating from him. It doesn't feel like a cage, she said. For the first time in years, it feels like home. Or like it could be. His eyes searched hers. Are you sure? Yes, she said, and she was. I want to stay. Not because I'm scared of him anymore. Because when I think about leaving you, it hurts more than my rib. Something like wonder flickered across his face. He lifted a hand, paused like he was asking permission, then brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered at her jaw, cool and careful. I've lived a very long time, he said softly. I've watched empires rise and fall, watched alphas and kings and queens burn their worlds down for less than what I feel when you look at me like that. Like what? She whispered. Like you're not afraid, he said. Like I'm not just a monster in the dark. You're not, she said. You're the one who turned the light on. Weeks slid by, strange and bright. Mara found a job at a small art gallery downtown. The owner, a woman with ink-stained fingers and kind eyes, hired her after one interview, saying, You look like you know how to really see things. That's what matters. Kaelan drove her on her first day, hands easy on the wheel of a sleek black car that turned heads everywhere. He waited until she went inside, until she looked back and saw him through the front windows, one hand raised in quiet encouragement. She came home that night to flowers on the kitchen table, a simple wild mix, not the showy red roses Damon used to buy after he hurt her. How was it? Kaelan asked, leaning in the doorway. Perfect, she said, cheeks aching from smiling. I forgot what it feels like to be excited about something. Get used to that too, he said. They built routines. Morning coffee at the long wooden table. Evening walks through quieter streets where Kaelan could move without catching too many human eyes. Late nights on the balcony, the city spread below them in a web of lights. He told her things about the hidden world, about packs that ran in the bayous under full moons, about witches who whispered over the river, about old treaties that kept human governments from learning too much. Why do they listen to you? She asked one night, curled against his side on a balcony chair. Because I've kept my word, he said simply. Because when I say I will end you to someone who breaks the laws of our world, they believe me. A king is only a king as long as his promises mean something. And me? She asked. What do your promises mean to me? He looked down at her, eyes soft in a way she doubted anyone else ever saw. To you, he said, they mean everything. She felt it then, the shift inside her. Not prey. Not property. Not even just an omega under someone's protection. Something equal. Chosen. Sometimes, when she woke from a nightmare, she'd find him sitting in a chair by the window, watching the sky lighten. He'd always say, couldn't sleep. Like that meant anything for a vampire who didn't need rest. She stopped correcting him. One clear night, almost a month after the wrong number call, they stood on the balcony again. The sky was scattered with stars, the city humming quietly beneath. Warm air brushed over Mara's skin, carrying the distant sound of music from some bar down the block. Kaelan stood behind her, arms wrapped gently around her waist, chin resting lightly on her shoulder. Do you ever think about that night? She asked. More than I should, he admitted. About the way your voice sounded when you said he broke my rib. About how close I almost came to not answering. I was tired of human problems that day. She turned in his arms, searching his face. What made you pick up? He hesitated. Your name, he said finally. Mara. It means bitter in some old tongues. But in another world I used to walk, it meant beloved. I heard it on the caller ID. I wondered which you'd be. And? She asked, heart thudding. Both, he said and smiled. You walked into my house bitter from what the world did to you. You're leaving that behind. What's left is beloved, if you'll have the word. Her breath hitched. I love you, she said. The words surprised her with how easy they came. I don't know when it happened. Somewhere between the wrong number and watching you stare down my past like it was nothing. His eyes closed briefly, as if the confession physically hit him. I have been king, alpha, monster, guardian, he said softly. I have been many things in many languages. But I have never been someone's I love you until now. She rose onto her toes and kissed him. It was soft at first, careful, but when his hands tightened at her waist and he kissed her back, it deepened into something that felt like a promise carved into stone and starlight both. When they finally broke apart, foreheads resting together, breath mingling, she whispered, I'm not leaving. Not tonight? He asked. Not ever, she said. Not unless you asked me to. And even then, you'd have to make it a royal decree. His laugh was low and real. As your king, he murmured, I decree you stay. As the man who picked up the phone, I beg you to. I obey both, she said. Below them, the city kept moving, cars, people, lives that would never intersect with theirs. Up here, the world had narrowed to two people who had found each other in the dark. If you're still listening to this story, Mara's voice would say if she could reach through the screen to you. Thank you for staying with us through every breath, every bruise, every promise. She stepped back just enough to see Kaelan's face clearly and smiled. Thank you for listening to our story, she said, as if to someone unseen. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want more tales of Omegas who find their strength and kings who choose mercy. And in the comments, tell us what your favorite part was, the wrong number, the first time he called me his, or the moment we finally called this place home. Kaelan didn't hear the last part, not really. He was too busy memorizing the curve of her smile, the steady set of her shoulders, the way she leaned into him like she finally decided the world wasn't going to knock her down again. Always, he whispered against her hair. Always, she echoed. And somewhere, in a city that slept and stirred and dreamed, a phone rang in another dark room. Somewhere, another voice whispered, He hurt me. And the story of kings and monsters and the ones they chose to protect began again. The first challenge to their peace came on a Tuesday. Mara was closing up the gallery, keys jangling as she flipped the sign to closed. The evening was cool, the sky painted in streaks of lavender and gold. She texted Kaelan a picture of the sunset, something she'd started doing almost every day. Mara, heading home to the King Purpleheart. Kaelan, and the king is heading to you. She smiled, dropping her phone into her bag. As she turned toward the curb, a woman stepped out of the alley. Tall. Pale as marble. Hair like a spill of ink. Eyes too bright to be human, glowing a cold red for a heartbeat before dimming. Mara's stomach dipped. You're her, the woman said, voice silken and sharp. The human Omega the king pulled out of the mud. Mara's spine straightened. I'm Mara. Yes, the woman said thoughtfully. You are. I'm Lyris. There was something in the name. Old. Heavy. You're one of his people? Mara asked. Lyris smiled, all teeth and no warmth. Once, she said. Once I was his right hand. His chosen. The only one who stood at his side. Her gaze dragged over Mara with slow derision. Until he decided broken ribs and soft mortal hearts were more interesting than centuries of loyalty. Mara's fingers curled around her bag strap. If you have a problem with him, you should probably talk to him. Not ambush me outside my job. Oh, I will, Lyris said. But let's start with this, leave. Mara blinked. Excuse me? Leave the king, Lyris said, as if she were offering a reasonable suggestion. Walk away from his house, from his protection, from his heart. You lived without him once. You can live without him again. Why would I do that? Mara asked, incredulous. Because you're a weakness he can't afford, Lyris said simply. The packs already whisper. The hunters are restless. A vampire alpha king breaking his own distance from humans for a single omega? It unsettles the balance. And when kings stumble, their courts bleed. She stepped closer, too fast, too smooth, and Mara forced herself to hold her ground. Leave, Lyris repeated, eyes glowing faintly. Or I will make sure every creature who hates Kaelan knows your name. They will come for you. They will come for everyone you care about. And he will lose his throne trying to keep you breathing. A car door shut at the curb. Kaelan's voice floated across the space, calm and lethal. That's enough, Lyris. He moved between them in an instant, coat flaring slightly with emotion. Back away from her, he said. Lyris's smile sharpened. Your Majesty, she purred. I was just explaining the realities of our world to your new pet. Mara flinched at the word. Kaelan's hand twitched, as if he'd felt it. She's not a pet, he said. She's under my protection. Oh, I know, Lyris said. The whole city knows. Every pack alpha, every old king in their stone towers, every hunter who ever dreamed of putting your head on a spike. They're watching, Kaelan. You've never broken your own rules before. That makes you interesting. Kaelan's voice dropped. You're walking a very fine line. I'm trying to keep you on your throne. Lyris snapped, the silk cracking to reveal steel underneath. Do you think I like the idea of some rabid old king tearing this city apart because he discovered the great Kaelan Varis threw everything away for a human omega who dialed his number by mistake? Mara's pulse jumped. You think he threw everything away? She asked quietly. Because he answered a call for help? Lyris's gaze slid to her. Yes, she said bluntly. Our king was fear. He was law. He was untouchable. Now? She gestured at Mara. Now he has a heartbeat walking around outside his body. That's a liability. That heartbeat has a name, Kaelan said, voice like cut glass. And if anyone in my court thinks she is a liability, they can step forward and challenge me openly. Lyris's eyes flashed. Is that an invitation, Alpha? The air thickened. Power rolled off him, old and cold. For a heartbeat, Mara saw him the way the supernatural world must. Not just a man who made her coffee, but a king who'd held a city together for centuries with nothing but will and blood and iron rules. No, he said. It's a warning. For a second, Mara thought Lyris might attack. Then Lyris laughed, brittle, bitter. Fine, she said. Keep your human omega. Play house. Watch what happens when the other kings smell your weakness, Kaelan. I hope she's worth the war. She blurred. One moment she was there, the next the alley was empty, shadows trembling where she'd been. Mara exhaled shakily. So, she said, trying to keep her voice steady, that was fun. Kaelan turned to her, every line of his body softening. I'm sorry, he said immediately. She had no right to approach you without my consent. I'll deal with her. Is she right? Mara asked. About the others watching? About me being a weakness? His jaw clenched. You're the first thing in a very long time that's made me feel like a king instead of just a weapon, he said. If the others see that as weakness, that's their mistake. That's not an answer, she said gently. He looked away, just for a heartbeat, and she saw it, the weight, the calculations, the centuries of strategy in his eyes. There are other alphas, he said quietly. Other kings. Not all of them like the balance I've maintained. Some would like to see me toppled. Lyris is not wrong that you give them a target. Then I really am a liability. Mara whispered. You are my choice, he said. And that makes you my priority. He lifted her hand, pressed his cool lips to her knuckles. I won't give you up to keep a throne, Mara. If they come, they'll learn what it costs to touch what a vampire king calls his. That night, standing on the balcony, the world felt bigger. Tell me about the others, Mara said, fingers tracing idle patterns on Kaelan's sleeve. The ones Lyris meant. The other alphas. The old kings. You don't need to. I do, she said. If they're coming for us, I'd rather know their names. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. There's the Bayou Alpha, he said. Lucas. Wolf blood. He runs the packs outside the city. Brutal, but fair. He owes me favors, and he knows it. Friend? She asked. Sometimes, Kaelan said. Sometimes rival. But not enemy. Not anymore. Who else? Lady Myria, he said. Witch Queen of the River Covens. She doesn't pick fights she can't win. She's not the one I'm worried about. Then who? Mara pressed. He hesitated longer this time. There is an old king under the city, he said at last. Older than me. Older than this country. He sleeps more than he wakes. He doesn't care about humans. But he cares about leverage over me. And me staying with you gives him leverage, Mara finished. Yes. She leaned against the railing, looking out at the tapestry of lights. So we paint a different picture, she said slowly. We don't let them see just some human clinging to a king. We show them an Omega standing beside an Alpha. A queen beside her king. He huffed a soft, surprised laugh. You're not a queen, Mara. Maybe not, she said. But I'm not prey either. If they're going to see me, I want them to see someone who chose this. Not someone you dragged into your world. His eyes warmed. You did choose, he said. Even when you were terrified. Especially then, she said. A pause. If we're going to do that, he said eventually, we need to bring you into my court properly. Let them meet you. Let them see what I see. Mara's stomach flipped. Meet your court, she repeated faintly. As in, a royal introduction? As in a gathering, he said. Representatives from the packs, the covens, the clans. My own inner circle. They've heard whispers. It's time they meet the woman who made me break a centuries-old rule. So no pressure then, she muttered. He smiled, a real one, crooked and vulnerable. Quick pause. She said suddenly, half to him, half to the invisible audience she sometimes imagined. If you're watching this far, comment if you'd walk into a room full of monsters for someone who picked up your call. And hit subscribe, because I'm about to attend a Vampire King court meeting as the very human Omega everyone's whispering about. Kaelan raised an eyebrow. Talking to your future listeners again? Always, she said. Somebody has to tell them what it's like. The court gathering was scheduled for 3 nights later. Tamsin took personal charge of Mara's preparations, which made it feel less like a royal event and more like getting ready with a very overqualified big sister. We're not trying to make you look like them, Tamsin said, rifling through a wardrobe Mara was pretty sure hadn't existed last week. We're emphasizing you. Human. Warm. Alive. That's your power. That and my complete lack of table etiquette? Mara offered. Tamsin snorted. Court etiquette is overrated. Don't bow unless you feel like it. Don't bare your throat to anyone except the king you've already chosen. Mara blushed. That's a thing? In our world, yes, Tamsin said. It's a sign of trust. Submission. Or love, depending on the context. Don't do it by accident. Got it, Mara said. Keep my throat to myself. They settled on a dress in deep midnight blue, simple but elegant, with long sleeves that brushed her wrists and a neckline that left her collarbones bare but everything else covered. When Mara stood in front of the mirror, she almost didn't recognize herself. You look like a queen, Tamsin said firmly, cutting off Mara's instinctive protest. Don't argue. The king will have no functioning brain cell when he sees you. Is that a good thing? Mara asked. Very. Downstairs, the house thrummed. Rhea and Jace moved through the halls, checking wards, speaking in low tones. Strange new scents threaded the air: herbs, incense, ozone. The front drive filled with cars that gleamed like polished predators. Kaelan waited at the base of the stairs. When Mara appeared at the top, conversation in the foyer stuttered. Heads turned. Kaelan's expression shuddered, then opened again, softer than she'd ever seen it in public. "Mara," he said, like the word was both greeting and prayer. "Your Majesty," she replied, teasing, because if she didn't joke, she'd start shaking. He extended his hand. "Walk with me." Her fingers slid into his, and the contact grounded her. "Just remember," he murmured as they stepped into the main hall, where supernatural eyes watched from the shadows. "They're more afraid of me than you are of them." "I'm not afraid of them," she whispered back. "What are you afraid of?" he asked. "Tripping in front of your entire court," she said. "Breaking the fragile illusion that I know what I'm doing." He chuckled, the sound low and warm. "If anyone laughs, I'll end them." "That's a little extreme," she muttered. "I'm an alpha vampire king," he reminded her. "We're not known for moderation." The court hall looked different with people in it. Last time Mara had been here, it was quiet, just her and Kaelan and the hum of monitors. Tonight, candles burned in wrought iron sconces. Long tables flanked the room, occupied by clusters of beings who didn't quite fit into human categories. A woman with hair like woven river water, tiny gold charms braided through the strands. A man whose eyes flashed amber when he turned his head, wolf scent rolling off him. A cluster of pale, elegant figures who watched everything with the stillness of statues. Rhea and Jay stood near the back, alert but relaxed. Lyris leaned against a pillar, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Kaelan led Mara to the center of the room and let go of her hand only long enough to turn and face the gathered court. "This is Mara Linwood," he said, voice carrying without effort. "She came to me as a human calling for help." I answered. "She stays because she chooses to. From this night forward, she is under my protection, not as a guest, but as my chosen." A murmur rippled through the hall. "His Omega," someone whispered. "His Queen," someone else murmured. Mara's heart hammered. She forced herself to stand tall, to meet the eyes that met hers. A tall man stepped forward from the cluster of wolf-scented figures, broad shoulders, hair in a rough braid, eyes in intense gold. "Lucas," Kaelan greeted. "Kaelan," the Bayou Alpha replied. He inclined his head slightly toward Mara. "Mara Linwood." "Hi," she said, because what else did you say to a werewolf alpha king? He studied her for a long moment, as if he were smelling her fear, weighing her courage. "You called him," Lucas said at last. "And he came." "Yes," she answered. "And you stayed," he added. "Yes." He nodded once, apparently satisfied. "Good," he said. "The world has enough humans who run from power. It's about time we saw one stand beside it. My Pax will honor your place at his side." "Thank you," she said, relief loosening her shoulders. From the other side of the hall, a woman in dark green stepped forward, river water scent clinging to her like perfume. "Lady Myria," Kaelan said, giving a small, formal bow. "Kaelan Varis," she replied, voice smooth. "You bring a human Omega into the center of your storm. Bold." "I've always been bold," he said mildly. "Foolish is a step away from bold," she countered. Her gaze slid to Mara. "Do you understand what it means to stand with him, little one?" "Yes," Mara said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "It means if someone like Damon comes for me again, they won't find me alone." Myria's lips curved. "True enough. Very well. I'll mark you in my ledgers as not to be sacrificed in any rituals." "That was an option?" Mara asked faintly. "In some worlds," Myria said. "Not in his. Not while he is king." Her eyes flicked to Kaelan. "Keep her alive," she said. "I find I rather like the idea of a human who knows exactly what she chose." When she drifted back to her coven, Lyris finally pushed away from the pillar. She approached not like an enemy, but like a blade unsheathed. So this is it then, she said. You present her as your chosen before every alpha and king and witch in the city. I do, Kaelan said. You can't take it back, Lyris warned. I don't intend to, he replied. She looked at Mara for a long, long moment. You have no idea what you've walked into, she said softly. But you did it on your own feet. That's something. Is that approval? Mara asked, cautious. Acknowledgement, Lyris said. Approval comes if you survive the first storm. What storm? Mara asked. The candles flickered, though there was no breeze. Under the city, something ancient shifted. That night, after the court dispersed and the house quieted, Kaelan and Mara stood once more on the balcony. You did well, he said. I didn't trip, she said. So success. You did more than that, he said. You looked alphas and kings in the eye and didn't look away. You stood there as if you belong. Maybe I do, she said. You do, he corrected. She leaned into him, head on his chest, listening to the faint hum where a human heartbeat would be. What did she mean? She asked. Lyris. About the storm. Kaelan's arms tightened around her. The old king under the city has woken, he said quietly. I felt it when the candles flickered. He's turning his attention toward us. Because of me, she said. Because of me, he countered. He doesn't like change. He doesn't like kings who gain something he doesn't have. He sees you as an advantage he could take. I see you as everything. That's a lot of pressure, she said lightly, trying to keep fear from rising. You're not pressure, he said. You're the one thing that makes this worth the fight. She swallowed, throat tight. What happens if he comes? Kaelan looked out at the city, eyes reflecting the lights. Then we show him what it means when an alpha vampire king stands with his omega and refuses to bow. She smiled faintly. You and your kings and omegas. They're just words for power and bond, he said. But they matter. They shape how the world sees us. How we see ourselves. How do you see me? She asked. He tipped her chin up, meeting her eyes. As the one who called and made me remember why I swore to protect this city, he said. As the one who walked into my house as prey and stands now as my equal. As the queen I never thought I wanted until you stood on that balcony and said I'm not leaving. Her eyes stung. Say it again, she whispered. You're not leaving, he said. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not until we've outlived every storm and every old king who thinks he can touch what's ours. She kissed him, and the fear didn't vanish, but it dulled under the weight of his certainty. Somewhere beneath the streets, an ancient thing turned over, eyes opening in the dark. The storm was coming. But for the first time in her life, Mara wasn't planning to run from it. The storm didn't announce itself with thunder. It started with a hairline crack in the quiet. Mara was in the study with Kaelan, reviewing a map of the city marked in threads of silver and red, when every candle in the house guttered at once. The wards hummed like struck glass. The air went cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. Kaelan's head snapped up. He's here. Here? Mara asked, heart already picking up. As in, upstairs, downstairs, under our feet here? Under, Kaelan said. But close enough to knock. The floor trembled. Lines of old stone in the walls glowed faintly, veins of something older than brick pulsing with dull red light. The screens on the monitors glitched, static washing over every feed for a heartbeat before clearing to a single image. A tunnel. Wet stone. Darkness thicker than it should be. And in the center of the frame, eyes opening, pale, ancient, bored and hungry all at once. A voice rolled through the house, not from speakers, not from vents, but from the stone itself. Kaelan Varis. Old. Tired. Amused. My fledgling king. Mara's skin prickled. Kaelan stepped forward, shoulders squaring. Eric's, he said. You've woken. The old king under the city chuckled, the sound like rocks grinding together. I felt a shift, he said. The balance tilting. Our careful distance from human hearts, bending. I smelled an Omega's fear and your answer to it. Mara swallowed. He couldn't see her, she reminded herself. Just feel her. Probably. Hopefully. You don't interfere in the lives above, Kaelan said. That was our pact. I don't interfere, Eric's agreed. But I watch. And I like to know what my alphas value enough to break their own rules. The image on the monitors flickered. For a second, Mara saw herself reflected in the tunnel water, bruised, breathing hard, phone pressed to her ear. Then Kaelan, standing in a doorway like a shadow with a heartbeat. You picked up, Eric's murmured. You chose one voice. One little human Omega. You risk hunters and councils and rival kings for her. Why? Kaelan didn't hesitate. Because she called, he said. Because no one came for me once, and I refuse to be that silence now. Because she is not leverage. She's the line I will not let you cross. Bold, Eric said. Foolish. The tunnel darkened further. Give her to me. I will keep her. You will rule unencumbered. No weakness. No heartbeat walking outside your chest. Mara stepped forward before she could think better of it. No, she said. The house went utterly still. Mara, Kaelan said softly, warning and worry tangled. But the word was already out, hanging in the charged air. I'm not a tribute, she said, voice shaking but clear. I'm not a bargaining chip. I'm not something you pass around so kings can feel safer. Silence pressed down, heavy as ocean water. You speak to me, little Omega? Eric's asked, curiosity sharpening the words. You, who would die if I so much as cracked your ribcage from below. I've almost died already, Mara said. Locked in a room by a man who called himself an alpha. No one cared. No one came. Not the human courts. Not my friends. Not you. Her chin lifted. He did. She reached blindly for Kaelan's hand. He took it at once, cool fingers wrapping around hers, the contact steadying her bones. You call it weakness, she went on. That he answered. That he cares if I breathe. But that's the only reason your city is stable. He cares. He hears he broke my rib and decides it's his business. You don't. The tunnel image wavered, as if something down there had leaned closer. You challenge me on who is King Omega. I'm not challenging your crown, she said. I'm telling you what kind of king you actually have. You call him Alpha. Vampire. Weapon. But you forgot the word that matters. Her fingers tightened around Kaelan's. Guardian, she said. He's a king who answers. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Not the candles, not the house, not the breath in Mara's lungs. Then Kaelan's power surged, cold and silver and absolute, wrapping around her hand, around the house, pouring down into the old stone beneath. If you want to test my rule, Eric's, he said, voice low and iron sure. Come up. Stand in front of every pack and coven and hunter I've held in check for centuries, and tell them you'd rather have a king who never answers the phone when they scream. A low, rumbling sound rolled up from below. It took Mara a second to realize. The old king was laughing. You've grown teeth, fledgling, Eric said. And your Omega has a tongue sharp enough to cut old stone. The tunnel darkened. The eyes dimmed. Keep her then, Eric said. Keep your Stormheart Queen. But know this. If you ever forget the promise you spoke tonight, if you ever stop answering when they call, I will come back. And I will not be amused. The connection snapped. The candles flared back to life. The monitors blinked, returning to their normal feeds, front gate, side alley, quiet street. Mara realized she was shaking only when Kaelan turned and pulled her into his arms. You just talked back to the oldest king in the city, he murmured into her hair. Do you know how many alphas have dissolved into dust under that voice? Do you know how many Omegas have dissolved under men like Damon? She countered, voice muffled against his chest. You're my king. If he wanted to take that away, he was going to have to hear from me too. He leaned back enough to see her face, eyes darker than she'd ever seen them and softer than they had any right to be. My Stormheart Queen, he said, tasting the words. I like that. Don't get used to me yelling at ancient kings for you, she warned, a shaky smile tugging at her mouth. I fully intend to, he said. The months that followed were calm in a way Mara had never known. No locked doors. No raised voices. No fear waiting for her at the bottom of the stairs. Instead, there were slow mornings in Kaelan's kitchen, warm coffee in her hands while he watched her with that soft, steady look that always made her feel chosen. There were quiet nights on the balcony, the city lights glowing below them, his arm around her waist like it belonged there. Damon was gone, tried, sentenced, and out of her world for good. The old king beneath the city had returned to sleep. And Kaelan's court had learned one simple truth. Mara wasn't a weakness. She was the woman that king had chosen. Sometimes she still woke from dreams of the apartment, of the broken rib, of calling for help with shaking hands. But every time, she opened her eyes to Kaelan beside her, or sitting in the chair by her window, watching over her with a calm she'd grown to trust completely. One evening, they stood together on the balcony as the sky faded from pink to deep blue. The breeze was warm, carrying the soft sounds of the city below. Mara leaned into him. I'm glad I called you, she whispered. Kaelan's hand slid gently down her back. I'm glad I answered. She looked up at him, feeling the truth of it settle in her chest. I love you, she said simply. He cupped her face, brushing his thumb across her cheek in a way that still made her breath catch. And I love you, he said. My Omega. My equal. My heart. She smiled, leaning into his touch. For the first time, she said softly, I feel safe. You are, he whispered. Always. And as the city lights flickered on below them, Mara knew the story that began with a wrong number had become something she never expected. A place to stay. A place to heal. A place to call home. Always. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment what your favorite part was. Your support helps bring more stories like this to life.